The government has no desire to own equity in companies any longer than necessary and will seek to dispose of its ownership interests as soon as practical.
He's the new head of the Auto Task Force, following in Ratner's footsteps. Ron Bloom this morning saying the government intends to pass off its ownership of GM and Chrysler as soon as possible. He spoke this morning at a hearing of the Congressional Oversight panel at Wayne State University in Detroit. And earlier, our Jerome Levin talked with the chair of the panel, Elizabeth Warren, about her thoughts on the allocation of TARP funds.
My job is to head up an oversight panel. I think that makes me a professional skeptic because that's what's best under these circumstances. It's to ask hard questions, and when we get answers to those, ask more hard questions.
We've seen that the warrants that were given to the U.S. government in return for the money that was given to Goldman Sachs yielded a $1 billion payment to the government and to the Treasury. Is that a big win for the American taxpayer?
Well, I think win is a relative term here. When you lend someone money and you get paid back, it used to be that that's what we expected. If that's in this economy become a win, then I guess we can call it a win. The good news is Goldman has paid us back, and they paid us back according to the terms of the initial contract. Of course, we don't have payback from most of the other large financial institutions yet.
All right, waiting for payback. Let's bring in Jerome Levin live from Wayne State University. What sort of information was that panel seeking today?
Well, there's really three categories, Gigi. The first thing, as Professor Warren said earlier, they want to find out when the government is going to get paid back. So there were a lot of questions about when the investment to General Motors, to Chrysler, to the auto supply companies, and to some of the credit arms like GMAC is going to come back to the U.S. government. They were quite interested in that. They were also interested in whether the government has been interfering at all in the operations of these companies, because there's been some evidence of that, and they want to make sure that the government is not telling the companies on a day-to-day basis how to operate, which might impede their ability to recover and then return that investment. And then the third area, which was at the end and came sort of at a much lower degree, there's some question about bankruptcy law and how bankruptcy law is being used, and is it being used to the detriment of creditors?
Well, everyone wants to know when they'll get their money back. How soon did witnesses say the government and taxpayers could get their money back?
Well, the biggest area is General Motors right now. The biggest investment of the $80 billion that went to the automobile industry, $50 billion of it went to General Motors in the form of loans and equity. So there's some question about when GM is going to pay this back. And GM said the first step is going to be, Ron Bloom said the first step is going to be in 2010 when there's a initial public offering of shares. At least that's the intention now, is to create an initial public offering of shares. Of course, that depends on how the stock market is doing. That also depends on how GM is doing and whether GM is making money, because there's really no point in an initial public offering if GM can't return to profitability and become a stable and cash-positive car company.
Okay, all eyes are on whether that IPO will happen or not. Jerome Levin, thanks for joining us from Wayne State University.